Hi, Three Creeks team. It's your friendly neighborhood nurse here, Jill. Just wanted to give you a few COVID updates on this video. Make sure we're all on the same page with all of our middle schoolers coming back in person after spring break. First thing on the agenda here is vaccines. It was awesome to see some familiar faces at the vaccine clinic on Wednesday. Nothing feels better than having the team get vaccinated and being a part of that. So that's awesome. On that note, you will be free from quarantine when you hit the 2-week mark after your second dose. So that is awesome and going to save a lot of trouble in the future. It does not, however, save you from having to test if you get sick in the future. So unfortunately, if you're having symptoms and they are persisting past the 48-hour mark, we will have a test for COVID again. And sometimes, obviously, people may continue to test positive or may get reinfected from a different variant or what have you. So it won't save you from that situation. But the more freedom, the merrier. On that note, another change we have is that we will be opening restrooms back up to full and normal capacity with students coming back. So we don't have to have the every other stall blocked off and sinks. So just keep that in mind that there's more students in that area at one time. Another thing that's coming back, or another change with everyone coming back, is the targeted quarantine. And I've spoken to some of the middle school teachers certainly about this as we've dealt with cases and what this is going to look like. So the CDC has dropped their recommendation from 6 feet to 3 feet. And that kind of changes our qualification for using targeted. So what that looks like is if you have a seating chart in place and those students are following the seating chart and able to stay seated for most of the class period in those seats, and your students are facing the same direction, if those things are in place, then if we have a positive case, then I will quarantine based on a 6-foot bullseye, basically, around that positive person, even if they are not able to maintain the 6 or 3 feet. We're going to go in that 6-foot radius there. The only thing is to note about that is if you can't face the same direction. So obviously some of the science classes, there's issues with being able to stay seated. Like if they're getting up and doing stuff, obviously PE and things like that, they may not be able to follow that. So that would be the only caveat there. Another thing that is changing or has changed and been already released is the ability to test out early from quarantine. And I wanted to go through this pretty thoroughly because we're starting to see this as well. So what that looks like is if you have an exposure to a positive and there is a 10-day quarantine, on day 5, as long as there's no symptoms, you can test for COVID. And if you're asymptomatic, you can even do a rapid. And if that test comes back negative, then you can return out and, get out of quarantine and return to normal activity on day 8. It only saves 2 days off the quarantine. But this is certainly something that people are pursuing. This is something that's available to staff and all students. It's not something that I'm going to scream from the rooftop or that the district is going to throw out there as options loudly, but it is available. It's certainly already happening, particularly in athletics. And it is a mess to track, certainly for the nurses and the COVID team. So just keep that in mind. You might start seeing emails about that. And I would need to see the negative test and make sure that we're clear and then track when they can come back. Another thing to think about on that note is that a lot of times if you're, particularly at the elementary level, if you are quarantining an entire cohort, if you have 2 or 3 students that test out early, there's not going to be a classroom or a teacher possibly for them to even come back to. So it's not always going to equal a return to school, but certainly a return to the world. We also want to definitely encourage still symptom monitoring. This 14-day was there for a reason, and that's because there are many people that can still contract and get sick from day 6 through 14. So we want to continue to make sure we're monitoring symptoms, even if we test out early and feel fine after that day 5. And the final thing I wanted to talk about is the school closures. So we are no longer doing 24-hour closures for cleaning. Yay, Three Creeks got theirs. They were one of the last ones. We got ours out of the way. But we are no longer doing that and doing the electrostatic sprayer. The reason that we had to close for 24 hours is because that electrostatic sprayer kicks up a lot of fumes, and we want the building to be empty for 24 hours after that to let those fumes clear out and kind of let everything settle before returning to the building. We are not going to be doing that anymore. We're just closing schools a lot, so we want to avoid doing that. And so instead, we are doing focused cleanings. There is a lot of information on that on the return to in-person guidelines that were emailed to everyone. And it goes full on into the cleaning section and tells you what we're looking at. But just to note, if we have a case that was in the building during their communicable time, you can be sure that I will find out where in the building they were, and focused cleaning will be done in those areas. So that is what we are doing moving forward. So I just want to wish you all good luck and wish me luck as we bring all these kiddos back for the last portion of the school year. And if you have any questions about where all the changes stand currently, please reach out and email me if you need, and I'm happy to support. So have a great weekend, y'all.